Welcome. Welcome, Leon. Welcome, Eric. Jane, give me a thumbs up when we are live. Excellent. And so this is Career Lab Wednesday. We're here every Wednesday. Sweet. Thank you, Jane. We're here every Wednesday, noon to 1 p.m. Central. There's a few ways that you can engage with us. We love it when you jump in directly on this Zoom link. We can work with you one-to-one. If you can't do that, and you can only join in on YouTube or on LinkedIn, go ahead and type questions that you have into the comment section, and Jane will get those over to us. We'll do our best to answer those questions. So we have been tracking with Drew Allison, who has been gracious enough to join in over the past, what's it been now? It's been a month and a half about?
6 weeks, yep.
6 weeks, okay. And so Drew is in a transition in his job, and has been, opening up the hood to the car of the process of the job search and everything that goes on in there. So it's been excellent. It's been quite wonderful learning. If this is your first time joining in, and you haven't seen Drew share about what he's been up to, you can always go back and review those recordings in YouTube. So we'll provide all of that here in the chat as we get going. Now, what I want to say too is that, yes, we're doing that. Drew is opening up the books, opening up his process to us. But our primary job here is to serve you, is to help you with whatever questions you have. So it doesn't have to be part of this topic. We want you to get your questions answered. It can be anything from, do I do a cover letter? What do I do in a cover letter? How do I respond to this question in an interview? It can be minute like that, or you can open it up and say, hey, I'm in my career at this level here. I've gotten this feedback from my team or from my boss, and I'm having a hard time applying that. That's great territory as well. And sometimes folks join in for several months as they're developing themselves. Eric Miro, good to have you on. Good to see you here. So as we're getting started here, I just want to set that context. I'll do a few reminders throughout the hour. Drew, last week you shared with us about an offer that you turned down. So I would love to hear from you and hear where you're at in your process and any updates that you have for us.
Yeah, George, thanks so much. I appreciate being invited back and to continue this wonderful conversation that we've been having now for a month and a half. To catch anybody up on kind of my story just really quickly, I've been in sales my entire career. I was in the high-end retail space for 10 years before making a move to insurance back in 2018. And over the past 4 years, I've built a pretty wonderful insurance career, moving into sales director and VP roles. And unfortunately was met with a budget cut at the beginning of this year, and my position was eliminated. And it was a real gut punch. It was a huge tidal wave of fear and hurt and sadness and everything. And one of the first thoughts I had was I need support. I need accountability. I need people that I can talk to about this. And I knew that George was hosting, these career labs. And I thought it'd be a great place to come and not only be able to share and talk about what's going on, but hold myself accountable. And in a big way that I did that is I took my sales training and I turned it inward and applied it to myself in my job search. So I set up a pipeline of activity that I wanted to do every single week. So up until this week, I've been applying to 15 jobs every week, about 5 jobs a day. My goal has been to have 3 discovery calls or first round interviews a week, and to have 1 second round or interview with a decision maker per week. So those are kind of the 3 key milestones. The other thing that I didn't quite put a number on, but my other goal was just to continuously be networking and asking people, who can I talk to in your network? Who loves what they're doing? Who's doing something exciting? Who recently moved into a new job or a new career? Just so I could see what other people are up to and get inspired by their stories. And I was actually looking at my calendar right before we logged in here. And on average, I've been having 8 networking conversations a week. And they last anywhere from 15 minutes to an hour. And they've been just wildly inspiring. And being able to just talk to people without the pretense of an interview or like a quid pro quo, just to be able to talk to people about careers and the industry and the job market. It's made me more relaxed in the process overall, and it's allowed me to be more of myself when I do get into those kind of higher pressure interview like situations. And we talked about last week about the when and like what factors do you look at when you're deciding whether or not you want to take a new job, and when is it appropriate to turn down a position. And I think the root of that conversation kind of boils down to something I remember saying right at the end of last week's lab, which was I got one of my favorite jobs because on my resume I put that I was the founder and head of a breakdancing club in high school. And I was right out of college. I didn't have a ton on my resume. I still had those sort of like clubs and activities on there. And the gentleman that hired me, he's like, I love that you put that on your resume, and I absolutely hired you on the spot because of it. And he ended up being one of my best friends and one of my closest business mentors. And we're still very much in touch today, almost 20 years later. And I think about that story as I'm looking forward. My resume has gotten a lot longer. My CV is far more than just a single page at this point. And how do I continue to bring myself into what I'm doing while also representing my professional accomplishments, and angling to give an interviewer or a company what they're looking for? How do I balance what they're looking for versus who I want to be? And I think that's a really interesting conversation for today. And something that I can say about that directly is I've done a lot more vetting of the companies that I'm applying for and the people that I want to work with than I did at the beginning of my search. I was much broader in my application process, and I've kept my volume up, but I have been more specific about who I'm applying to and why I'm applying. So the who is, I've been digging a little bit more into companies. What are their values? What are they doing specifically in the space that sets them apart from their competitors? And who are the people that I'd be working with? LinkedIn is such a wonderful resource now in terms of vetting and understanding who the individuals are that are working in these companies and giving me an insight into their culture. So that way, when I go into these interviews, I have a better sense of the culture, and I can talk about how I would really fit in well with that culture. And culture is one of those broad topics that everybody kind of has their own definition of or interpretation of. But for me, it's I want to be with like-minded people. I want to be with people that are in similar stages in their life, who have similar goals. And I love a good variety, but I want people who are going after their profession in a similar way that I am. And for me, it's really about maximizing my day and being able to pivot to family time at the end of the day. And that's not what every work culture is about. Some work cultures are much more, you are on all the time, no matter what. And there's kind of more flexibility during the business hours, but you're expected to be around a little later during the day. And I've realized that that's just not an environment that works well for me. I can't bring my best self into that. So it's one of those filters that I've started applying to my job search as I look for different cultures and places that I'll fit in with really, really well. And one of the realizations I've come to very recently in the past, I'd say 72 hours, is that the conversations that I've been having that have meant the most to me, that I'm most excited about, tend to be not direct W-2 job offers, but shorter contract opportunities or startup opportunities where the exact role and the exact division of responsibility isn't quite mapped out yet. I'd be working to map that out. And it would be like a 6-month handshake where we dig into it together and try to figure out, okay, what does this potentially look like? So it's my job search has taken me to a place that I never expected to go. I expected to find another executive level or director level position in insurance or in another industry. But I'm leaning, because of this drive to show up authentically as myself, I'm recognizing that these other types of opportunities are more in line with how I want to be living my life. And there's a level of excitement that comes with these that I'm actually surprised at how excited I am. Now, it comes with there's the caveat, right? Like we're talking about having a career, and that career supporting my family, and what does that mean for my financial stability and all of that. And that's what I'm in the process of figuring out now is how do I balance the two. And maybe we can get into that in a little bit here, but kind of, that's what's driven me is my desire to show up and be myself at work. And I'm finding areas where I can do that. They're just not quite the areas I necessarily expected. How is that, George?
Thank you for the update, Drew. And what I'm hearing, what I want to repeat for people is that you're paying attention to what excites you. And that is taking you in some directions that you weren't planning on, you weren't expecting, but there are possibilities opening up. And I'm thinking of, actually, you're kind of taking us into purpose, into what's your purpose. And a purpose will tend to have you be excited and challenged, saying, oh, okay, how am I going to grow here? Purpose will have you learning and growing, and becoming a greater influence to the people that you're interacting with. So it sounds like that's what you're getting into here. The other thing I want to point out, though, is this has come up a lot with people. Sometimes people will volunteer somewhere for a little bit or take a job on contract to feel it out, because hiring somebody, making a bad hire costs the company so much money that and it can, it can be really annoying for the person coming on as well when things don't work out. So I think it's more and more common that somebody will work with a company on a project for a while, and that could turn into an ongoing job. But it sounds like you're liking they don't know exactly what they need. And so part of your job is helping to discover that and outline it and build that. And so it sounds like, an exciting opportunity for you. And I'm putting that out there for other people listening in, because some people are in the question of, well, am I just going to do this independently? Or am I going to be a contractor? And, so people are certainly questioning this, Drew. And I think, I'm imagining people are relating to what you're sharing.
I really appreciate that you brought up purpose, in response to everything I just shared. I think purpose is a great bottom line for what we're discussing. I'd love to share my purpose statement with you if you're interested.
Yeah.
So as part of my MBA studies last year, I developed a personal purpose statement, something that I could anchor myself to, and it's been one of the most rewarding exercises that I've done. And my purpose statement is this: I aim to grow, I aim to contribute, I aim to prosper, I aim to serve, and may my aims bring joy and challenge to my today. And this has been at the front of my mind since I came up with it. And any time that I'm looking to prioritize my time or to take on a new project or anything at all, I think how much of that project fits within my purpose statement. Now, growth is right up at the front. I know that I need to take care of my personal and professional growth if I'm going to be happy and be the most and happy is a tricky word. I'll get to that in a second. But if I'm going to bring my best to a situation, I need to be growing myself. But that growth really comes with my desire to contribute and to have a tangible contribution to the community that I'm involved in. So whether that's personally or professionally, but when looking at work, I want to be in a situation where I help to drive our culture, not just be a passenger of somebody else's culture. And that's the contribution that I'm looking for. I aim to prosper. I'm not going to hide. I'm not going to say that I'm here to just, I want to make money. I want the benefits that money comes with money. That's looking different as I move through different phases in life. But at the end of the day, I want a healthy, safe space for me and my family. And then lastly, I aim to serve, and that's where I derive a lot of joy out of serving others and helping them to serve themselves and grow and develop in their own right as people and professionals. So not only do I want to contribute to a culture, but I also want to serve those people in a very direct way. And the last part of that purpose statement, the focus on joy and challenge, to me, that's the equation of happiness. I'm happy when I'm taking joy in what I'm doing, but I'm also personally and professionally challenged in what I'm doing. And that challenge is going to bring in all sorts of emotions of fear, hurt, anger, and sadness. But that kind of cocktail for me is what really drives me towards the things that I'm passionate about. So that purpose statement has helped me. I have, in every good interview that I've had so far over the past 6 weeks, and I've had, probably about 15 interviews, I've talked about this purpose statement and I've walked people through it and I've explained how it's helping me make these decisions. And I've brought it up when I turn down offers too, and just, said very matter of factly that this sounds like a wonderful opportunity, just not for me and the purpose that I'm trying to live towards. So yeah, George, I think the purpose and having a clear idea of that, and also knowing that it's going to change and flux over time, is incredibly valuable in this.
Excellent. Drew, thank you. So I want to do a quick room reset, and I want to know how we can serve you today. Leon, Eric, Ashley, what questions do you have? So there's a few ways you can do that. You can come off mute. That's fantastic. You can also type into the chat if you have questions. If you're viewing through YouTube or LinkedIn, type your questions into the comment section and Jane will get those over to me. Got one question teed up here in a sec. What you're sharing, Drew, about your purpose and how you're sharing that in interviews, to ground this for everybody, what our approach is in the interview is that you are the interviewer. You're interviewing them. So what Drew is doing is he's sharing with the people during the interviews that they're interviewing him, but he's also interviewing them. And he's saying, hey, this is the criteria I'm looking at for me. And I'm here investigating if this job is in alignment with what I'm looking for. And that way, instead of Drew trying to prove himself to a company, he is proving himself because he's asking questions about the company that shows that he gets what's going on there, which is way more impactful than me trying to have the right answer. So when we're going to our topic today, it was about being more authentic, being more you in your job and in the job hunt process. That's really in a quick interview hack is to interview the interviewer and share with them your process, like what Drew is doing. And that actually will help them. We've talked about this before. Very often when people are hiring, they're not necessarily good at hiring. They don't necessarily have a good onboarding process. And so when you're asking intelligent questions about that role and sharing about yourself in an authentic way, it can really have the lights go off for them. If they've been having trouble hiring somebody, you might say something, you're like, oh, that's why that's why people aren't taking this in. So you could really serve them. And so what Drew, in your purpose statement, you talk about serving. So you're actually serving the individual in that interview. You're seeing them as a human being who you are serving, and you're a human, they're a human, you're connecting, you're developing that relationship right then in that moment. And that is powerful, because then you're actually making contact with somebody, and they're not just, a step on the process for you to get a job. They're an actual human being. And that's really important. That makes a big difference. There's two things that people are looking for behind every question, which is, does this person get stuff done? And do I like working with this person? Whether they're conscious of those two questions or not, that's what's going on behind every question asked in an interview. So, Drew, I love it. I love the way that you're sharing your process with us, taking us in there, and that you're sharing your purpose statement with people, helping them understand you. Well, they're probably kind of learning vicariously and saying, "Oh, wow, look at how I could do that." So, with me and with this company, so I just applaud you for that. We are getting a question here. So John is asking about, okay, so getting fired, it sounds like it was during the onboarding process, or I forget what that time is called, in the first few months. And so it sounds like, John, it wasn't a great fit for you, but your question has to do with, how do you respond? How do you talk about that in an interview when they say, why did you leave your last job? That's a great question. Great question. So what we coach people on is to have a very short answer to that question. No longer than 30 seconds. If you can do it in 20 seconds of, I came on, I was in the probation period, and it wasn't a good fit. And that's the essence of it. You might need to offer a few specifics to what your job was, but that's you just want to say that quickly and get it out of the way, and then you can follow up with, my understanding is, so if you were in a role that maybe you were doing account management and you were acquiring new leads, you might say, I didn't realize what went into getting new leads, and it was faster than I learned how to do. In the position here at this company, it's my understanding that I would be doing the account management side of things, and not this other aspect of it. So right there now, see, you're interviewing them. You just took it from a hairy situation where you could go on and try to explain yourself and try to say, no, I'm actually really good, or well, I was just, but when you start doing too much of that, they get freaked out. And so for you to own it and just say, here's what happened. So I'm talking to you here. What's this role look like? This is my understanding. Are we on the same page? And that's the way you can really own it. Drew, I would love to hear from you. I know you've been on the hiring side. And so what are your thoughts about this question?
Yeah, it's a great question, because it not only applies to being fired in the first couple of months or weeks, but being fired at any point, right, or being let go. You always have to. It's how do you address a quote unquote blemish on your resume, and how do you talk about that? And I think that the thing that I always focus on first and foremost is not bad mouthing my previous company. Like, no matter what, no matter how I feel and the energy that I have and whatever is going on behind the scenes, I never bring that into an interview, and I never talk about that. But what George said about recontextualizing the question, it's not a question of why it wasn't the right fit at the previous company, but turning it into why I'm the right fit for this company, and giving a comparison that says, I was not the right fit here because I don't do well learning and growing remotely. I understand that this position is in office, or at least has the hybrid opportunity. And so you're talking about how it's more about what suits you, and where you can be your best, and also almost inadvertently complimenting the company you're interviewing with by saying, hey, you have a system and a culture that I'm really going to thrive in. And that sets you apart from other companies that don't get that don't get to take advantage of my benefit of who I am, and what I get to bring to the table. So those are the two things that I really focus on, is kind of turning it into a positive for the person I'm talking to, and then just being very cautious not to get into a situation where I'm talking poorly about anybody else, no matter what the situation is. That is, and to give you a little context, or to give everyone a little context, I hired 40 salespeople over the course of 8 months. It was a ravage growth spurt. So there was a lot of interviewing, a lot of hiring, and the two red flags that always stood out for me are if somebody was bad mouthing any employer, no matter the reason, or if they didn't have any questions for me. And that's another topic. But if somebody comes in to interview with me, I don't care if they've talked to 18 other people at my company and they have a better idea of what the job is than I do. If they don't have a question for me, there's no endorsement coming, because that, to me, you don't show how, and this actually ties directly back to that question. You don't show how qualified you are for a job by what you've done in your past, but you show your knowledge by the quality of the questions you ask, and what that opens up and gets the interviewer to talk about. And turning a question like, hey, why did you leave your previous company? Turning that, scruffy answer into a really great question and proposition for the other person, that's on the other side of the table. It's you just made a beautiful pivot in the interview process.
That's awesome, Drew. Thank you for sharing that. That's I want to break this down a little bit more. I was thinking while you were sharing about that, because to get to a good response, I think about Dr. Judith Wright, one of the founders at Wright Foundation. When she shared before that sometimes doing a 4-minute talk on Fox is harder and takes more preparation than a 2-hour talk, because you've got a shorter amount of time, and so everything you say in that time is important. So working out all the kinks is needed. And so for a question like this, it can be really helpful to do things a little to allow yourself, because if I know myself, I am likely going to start off from a victim-y place and to blame other people and say it's not my fault. And what we do it right is we look at where people are at developmentally. And if I don't allow myself to have my reactivity, I'm not going to be able to harness that power and assert myself as well. So I might actually spend time with a coach and just say, oh, here's everything that was stupid about that company, and just get it out of the way so that I don't unconsciously bring it into an interview scenario. So get it out in a way that isn't going to hurt you, and that you can actually learn from. Because part of the way we learn often is talking out loud, hearing ourselves. And so if I say something irresponsible and I just blame somebody, then I'm able to say, oh, you know what, that doesn't totally land. Okay. And so it can be really helpful when you're preparing for an interview with this question to practice it a lot. Get out the stuff. You don't need to blame yourself for being irresponsible with, or doing things imperfectly. Get it out early, and not in the interview that you really want to land. So that's a strategic thing that you can use as well, John, is use friends, use a coaching call. You can always set up a time with me. 15 minutes, I will serve you as much as I can in that time. We'll share a link to my calendar there. So that goes for anybody who is curious about coaching. If you want to learn more, go ahead and click on that. I'm happy to talk with you and serve you as much as I can in that time. And if more is a good idea, we'll talk about that as well. So great question. Really appreciate that. Drew, anything else you want to add to that before we move on?
No, I think we covered that pretty thoroughly. But if anybody has any thoughts that spun off of it, throw it in the chat or speak up. We'll keep going.
Absolutely. Robbie, welcome. Good to have you here. Part of how we operate is we invite people to share as others are coaching and working, is for you to be learning vicariously. So Robbie, any questions you have, would love to know. How can we serve you today? Our primary job is to serve you in your career.
I just wanted to drop by and say hello and listen and just listen to what everybody has to say. I don't have any questions.
Okay, great. Well, good having you, Robbie. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
You bet. Leon, Eric, or Ashley, any questions, anything that you want to share, any ways you're relating?
Oh, no, I don't have any questions right now. I'm sorry, I'm a little distracted. I'm working too at the time.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Understand, Leon. Thanks for joining in.
Thank you.
Right on. Ashley, oh, yes. You can watch the video afterwards. And like I was sharing earlier, you can view the earlier videos on YouTube as well. So that is available for you. And we'll get that shared in here in just a moment, the link to YouTube. Okay, well, so again, Career Lab Wednesday, we're here Wednesday, noon to 1 Central Time. And we see your career as a pathway for you to reach your potential, as the vessel for you to become who you can become. It's a shift. It's not, we don't take the approach of work hard for several years and then try to retire early and that's it. Not fine if that's what your plan is, and maybe that's part of you and you reaching your potential. But we tend to look at, no, let's have our job be a very meaningful thing, something that when we look back on it, we are so happy that we engaged fully with, and that we thought we contributed to the company, to the community, to the world, and developed myself in the process. So that having that kind of come from in your career, in your job, really lights things up. It's a big shift when you're going into interviews. That changes the dynamic. That makes you more attractive because you're having more fun and you're there in investigating if this is something that's going to be exciting to you, and looking at the possibilities, the potential, instead of looking at, oh, what are all of the pain in the butt things I have to do. So it's a shift there. And again, sometimes working through the reactivity, is a helpful thing to do in the process.
Yeah, hearing you talk about that reactivity portion, it reminds me how important my community and my network is. And I was talking with the sales coach last week, and she was saying, have you clearly identified the team around you, and are you using those people to the best of their ability? Because I am reactive all the time. Constantly reacting to things around me, and I'm trying really hard to be more proactive and more neutral. But the reality is, I've got so much coming at me from different recruiters reaching out, different job postings, and I'm reacting to what I'm seeing. And the reality is that there's people in my life that want to support me. They want to help. They want me to bounce ideas off of them. They want to give their opinion. I just got a text from a friend, a colleague in the MBA program, and she's like, "Drew, we haven't talked in 4 days. What's wrong? What's going on? Like, I need my Drew update." And it comes from a place of caring. And but I personally have always had a problem with sharing too much of myself because I thought it was a weakness. And so this experience of transitioning jobs has, I've taken it as an opportunity to challenge myself to be more vulnerable with the people on my team. And those first couple of team members are pretty obvious. It's my wife, my family, one or two really close friends. But the folks that are really supporting me in a conscious way in this process are my coaches, the environment here in the career lab. A couple of networking folks that I know that are in similar industries that I'm looking to get involved in. And most recently, now that I've starting to toy with this idea of taking contract work, I've added a new person to my team, somebody who's a small business owner who can give me advice on things like establishing an LLC and setting up a QuickBooks and getting accounting done, because that stuff scares the life out of me. Like the idea of setting all that operational stuff up is so not in my wheelhouse. And it's like, maybe I'll partner with somebody and they can do that. Well, it's like, well, then you got two mouths to feed instead of one. Suddenly that idea, is much harder to pull off. But what I'm learning through my network is that my reactivity is the data that they need to support me. So if I can be vocally reactive to them and talk to them, they will provide insight and a sense of calmness that I'm not providing to myself. So that's just kind of, George, you talk about, the reactivity. I'm starting to see my reactivity, the gifts of it, as opposed to just the downsides.
That is really beautiful. Will you say that again? That your reactivity is the what?
So my reactivity, my vocal reactivity is the data that my team needs to support me.
Can you walk us through one specific example of that?
Great. Yeah. So I was talking with a friend, a new person that's in my networking circle who has a sales consulting business. And that's basically what I'm thinking about starting, is my own sales consulting firm. And I've got 3 clients that I'm currently talking to. I have a straight sales training opportunity with one company where I would come in and do sales training on a contract basis for a new team. I have an NFT project that's getting off the ground where it would be selling NFTs in the logistics and transportation space. And I'd be building the sales engine for that. And I have an opportunity in the cannabis space to work with a nonprofit that's based on education, wellness, and the therapeutic benefits of cannabis. And again, building a sales machine for that organization. So 3 totally different industries doing basically the same function for these 3 different industries. Now, one of the tying threads is I would need to charge all of these people and invoice them and get money from them. And I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to set that up. I've never done it before. And of course I can go online and I can figure it out. But I have a real reactive energy towards money and operations around money and finance and bank accounts and all of that. It's just
when you
never
say
been
reactive, do you mean it plays out as avoidance, as you just don't do it?
Yeah, that's it. It's something I put. I'll take care of that tomorrow. I'll figure it out later. I avoid it at all costs.
Yep.
The big reason I avoid it is fear of the unknown. I don't know what's going to happen if I start pulling on that thread, and then all of a sudden there's different laws I need to learn about and different, financial stipulations. All whatever's going to come with this. I have no idea. So I was talking to, and this person, we'd only had one conversation before, but I started to I was vocally reactive to them. I just started saying, I was like, listen, this whole endeavor sounds really exciting, but I am scared out of my mind about this portion of it. And if I had kept
translating, reactive means, what I'm hearing, Drew, is that reactive means avoiding. It also means saying, I don't want to do it. It means like voicing. So you started voicing all the ways that you wouldn't want to start your own company.
Correct.
Okay.
And the reality is that if I'm not when I wasn't talking to somebody about it, it was very easy for my thoughts to go, well, I don't want to do the accounting side. Maybe I just won't do this. I can't do that part of it. I'm just going to ignore this opportunity altogether and go try to find, a more conventional job. That's how far, like, the reactivity and the avoidance started to make me think that I'm just going to pass up with this opportunity altogether. But by voicing it and talking to this person and saying, hey, I'm scared about this. I don't know what's going on, and what to expect. He just very calmly, he was like, I was in the exact same shoes. I started doing some research. I did this, this, and this. And he's like, honestly, it's the easiest part about starting the company. It's the easiest thing to do. And he walked me through the steps that he took, gave me some little tidbits that I wouldn't have thought of. And really, my reactivity turned into data for him to support me in a way that I couldn't come out and just ask for support. And it made the relationship really strong. He felt
he got to see your blocks.
He got to see
what the blocks was, and you're saying that behind the blocks is basically fear of the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
And then he got to say, wait a minute, Drew, like I know you enough to know that you can do this. And it's not as big of a deal as the fear of the unknown has you thinking it is, or and so he's like, you do this, this, and this, and then you have somebody giving you an example in a way that you understand to some degree, and you can start to picture yourself doing what is the unknown. And you can start to see, okay, now I can do that. But if you hadn't voiced up in the first place and said, hey, this is why I'm not doing this, because I'm afraid of this, I don't like it, that wouldn't have happened. And I want to underline another thing here, that I don't like it. That is such a common thing. When I don't like something, really what I'm saying is I'm afraid of it. It's the unknown.
Totally. And your point about me being able to visualize myself in his story was so valuable. So valuable. Being like, okay, if he did it, and he's so modest. He's like, I'm nobody special. He's like, I'm not smarter than the next guy. I just figured it out. And he's like, and I got support from people I knew. And I talked to somebody who had done this before, and and it becomes this chain of shared knowledge. But the catch is having to speak up and ask for it. People aren't just going to show up and be like, hey, I'm going to give you free advice. It's you got to go and seek out those people. And it reminds me, I'm reading in part of one of my sales courses, I'm reading Sacred Hoops, the Phil Jackson story, his book. And he talks about going into a locker room and visualizing all the things he's going to do in the game before the game starts. So that way, when the game starts, he's got these little visual cues in his mind of how he's going to react and what he's going to do, taking away some of the stress of having to make those decisions in the moment. And that visualization, I think about that a lot in terms of like a sales pitch or an interview, and especially in the interview process. The more I can visualize how I'm going to react to things ahead of time, the better I'll be in the moment, because I will have already seen myself doing this once before. And that's how I feel when it comes to setting up an accounting structure. I could set up a sales machine all day, but setting up an accounting machine, I now have a little bit of an idea, at least enough to get me over that fear and get me started.
Beautiful. Okay. That's I'm glad you said that was helpful about the being able to kind of see it visually or see yourself doing it. That is one of the things that I think a lot of people get to in coaching. Is it's helpful for me to talk out loud and see myself doing something and to be practicing doing something before I'm actually doing it. And that way I know where my breakdowns are going to be. That's one reason why mock interviews are so helpful, is because I get to make the mistakes. I get to get the jitters out. I get to see where my breakdowns are and where I really need to practice some more. So that's great that you're saying that. Well, I want to check in with people. We don't have any more questions coming in that I'm aware of. Is there anything that anybody is wanting here? Any questions that you have, anything on your heart that you're wanting support with? You can type your questions into the comment section in LinkedIn or on YouTube, and we will do our best to answer those questions. And let us know what support you need, what you're working on. Okay. Well, I don't know, Drew, is there more that you'd like to add, or maybe we're good for the day?
I guess I'll share. I got a question earlier today about, and this is a pivot, but it's just a quick little thing. It was a question about when you're applying for a job online and you get and they ask you what your salary expectations are. How do you answer that question?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was a great question, because when I see that question pop up in an application, my whole body cringes in on itself like a cockroach hiding from a light. Like I want to run away from that as quickly as possible, because how the heck are you supposed to answer that? Are you supposed to be honest? Are you supposed to lowball? Are you supposed to highball? Like what's the answer there? And I know from direct feedback that I have put in salary expectations that are too high for the role, and therefore I wasn't even considered. So it was used as a benchmark of like, if people ask for too much, we're not even going to talk to them. We're not going to waste our time. And there's an element to that I respect, right? But I have more flexibility in my life than just what the salary is, especially when it comes to benefits and other things that you can incorporate into a full comp package. I feel like it's a very limited way to look at things. So the way that I answer those questions and applications, it's more of an art than a science. But I do, if I really want the job or I'm really excited about the company, I will lowball myself so I don't get weeded out. I would rather lowball a little bit on the front end than try to then risk not getting a conversation with somebody. And that's because I trust myself to, once I get to the negotiation process, to get myself back where I need to be. And how do I know if I'm lowballing or highballing? A lot of times, buried somewhere in the job posting, they will give the salary range, even though they're asking for it as well. So then I'll match what their salary range is. That I'll use the median of their range. I'll go on Glassdoor and see if I can find anybody that's posted, compensation rates on Glassdoor. Or I'll look at similar companies and see if I can find some comparable information. Now, I will go the other direction with it as well, where if I'm applying to a job that feels like a good opportunity, but I'm not overly excited about it, I will put exactly what I need in order for me to say yes to something like that. And if it's in their wheelhouse, great. If not, then I'm not wasting either of our time. So, it's really, I use it. It's almost my own litmus test of do I want to lowball because I absolutely want to have the next conversation? Or would I rather be honest and upfront from the beginning? And if it's a good fit, great. If not, no worries. That tells me how excited I am about the position. So again, when it comes to collecting data, which I've talked about here before, I just love collecting data on myself as I go through these processes. That question of what my required salary range is gives a lot of data about me and my excitement level for that job. So I got that question earlier today. Thought it might be helpful for anybody listening.
No, that's a common question, Drew. Thank you.
Oh.
Thank you for sharing that. That's to not weed yourself out if you really want it. And I liked what you said about trusting yourself to be able to negotiate what you want. That is a thing that does come up in jobs. Is I've had several people who shared, this company said that I was the person they wanted. And when you can get to that spot with the company, then the pay, I mean, of course there'll be a point where they're not going to pay you, but you can really work out the benefits, vacation time, what the pay is, what really matters to you. Some people these days are working, saying, you know, I only want to have to come into the office 3 days a week. That would mean a great deal to me. I've got kids, I have all these errands I need to do, and when I don't have to come into the office, boy, that makes my week a lot easier. So stuff like that, there's a lot that you can bring to the table. And you know, I want to riff on this for a couple minutes. We haven't talked about this book in a minute, but I love the book, Never Split the Difference. It's this guy who is a hostage negotiator, and what he shares, and I think this applies well to people interviewing and in the job hunt, is he said, you know, I learned over enough time doing hostage negotiations that the time to be really scared was if everything was going right. If everything was just falling into place and there was no catches and it was going so smoothly, then I knew that something horrible was about ready to happen. And I always he's like, there's no is the starting point. Conflict is where we actually know we're relating, we've got skin in the game. So when you're interviewing, you want to find the catches, like where are the rough points, where are the, you know, and to really find those areas and talk about them, because that shows you as somebody with character, quality, and who can handle yourself in talking about things. If you just go to oh yeah, no, that's great, I can do that, absolutely fine, I can, if you do get hired, you're setting yourself up for some big challenges as you try to prove yourself, and that often doesn't work out so well. But usually what happens is they just won't hire you. They'll, you know, you don't make the emotional contact with them. So when you were sharing about that, Drew, somehow that came to memory when we were exploring that book. And I just loved it. I was like, that makes so much sense. When I've noticed this when I'm working with a new client, oftentimes I'm like, geez, this seems really awkward right now. And it's like, this is not it's not feeling smooth at all, but that's beside the point. That doesn't matter. Learning and growing happens with mistakes, happens with kind of screwing something up and saying, wait, where are we? Where are you? And that's where we actually make contact and learn and grow. So if you're in the interview process and stuff, and you find that coming up, it doesn't mean anything's wrong with you. It just means that you're sorting it out, you're making contact. So I've had too many people say, I don't know what's going on. I think the interviews are great. They smile, they tell me good job, and I never hear from them again. So, you know, if you can find the point of you know, what's really going on there and talk about it, you'll get better quality data in the interview as well. So that's always, we seek to have, you know, if you're a good fit for the company, and to know if you're not hired, why, what happened. And if you can get to that in the interview. Drew, you were sharing some about that, where you told somebody in the first 5 minutes, or you got to the point of realizing, hey, this isn't a fit, and you saved their time by bringing it up. And that's a good thing to do if you're you know, depending on your situation.
Yeah, and I'll double down on that. I turned down a job 2 weeks ago. It wasn't the right culture fit, not the right environment for me. And I was out with my wife and some friends on Sunday, and the hiring manager called me in the middle of the day on a Sunday. It was just like, hey, wanted to follow back up and see if maybe you'd reconsidered. Totally caught me off guard. I was like, what? I was like, this is weird. Like, and so at first I was flattered. I was like, okay, they really want me. They, you know, this is like, you know, am I stupid to turn this down? Like, they obviously want me. And at first I was like, no, you know, I'm still not interested. And he was like, well, he's like, would you want to have a lunch and kind of talk more about it? And I sort of felt this pressure. I was like, okay, fine, I'll say yes to a lunch. Like, what? It doesn't hurt to say yes to a lunch. And I said, email me with some time options. We'll talk about it tomorrow morning. And the problem is I get to a point in my job search where it is harmful to have that lunch. It's time that's being wasted where I could be used really well to have another conversation with somebody else. And it's not that these are bad people; it's just not the right fit. And so the next morning, I sent him a very nice email and just said, "Hey, you caught me a little off guard yesterday after sleeping on it. Unfortunately, it's not going to be the right fit for me." And historically, I never would have done that. I would have entertained the lunch and the conversation because it made me feel good to be wanted. But I allowed myself the pain of walking away from something because I knew it'd be better for me in the long run than to just have a lunch and feel wanted for a couple hours and then have to tell them no anyway. So those ideas of having to walk away from things and saying no's and confronting the fear of that, it just kind of keeps getting bigger and bigger as I get deeper into this process.
That's great, Drew. Thanks for sharing that. And as we're wrapping up, for folks who haven't followed Drew's story so far, one of the things is that he's killing it in his activity. He knows sales. He knows that he has to be out dialing, having conversations, having meetings. So there's a way that Drew can be picky. That sometimes if you want to have that kind of security, you have to have built up to and earned it. So you might not have that listening in, and that might mean that one of the first things you need to do is to be calling more people, to be accessing your network more, to be just having more of that. Again, and if you're currently in a job and you're looking to transition, that's always a great come from, because you have the security of a current job, and you want to ramp up your activity of networking now so that you're setting yourself up well when you're in more of the transition phase. So this is really, I think in some ways, Drew, it's a lifestyle. You've developed a lifestyle for yourself of networking and connecting. It's part of that. But I wanted to underline that for everybody, that it's there's a discipline in this that when you have more freedom, you can leverage yourself more.
100%. Yeah, well said, George.
Cool. Well, everybody, blessings. Thank you, Drew. Thank you so much for joining in and giving us a peek into your life and into your process. Really helpful. I get feedback from people saying this is fantastic. By the way, I think I've told you that a couple weeks ago, but I've got some more people who messaged me and said, hey, I viewed the last few. They've been really helpful. So I want you to know that. Really appreciate your time and you sharing yourself with us here.
Thank you very much. It's wonderful to be here. I get as much out of it as I hope everyone else does. And looking forward to continuing the conversation.
Excellent. All right. Cool. Thank you, Leon. Thanks for joining in. Robbie, good to have you. Jane, blessings. Drew, take care. We'll see you next week.
Cheers, everybody.